Hello YouTube, Ronan Kazi here. This is kind of a follow-up to the video I did yesterday. Some of the people were disappointed, so I'm going to make a little more proper video. Here I am going to be running a survivalist base build with Vial Jammer, and I have 6 pieces where I can put mods in that I can get the maximum 80% damage reduction to yellows. And so that's kind of what the basis of this build is. I'm still going to be able to do AoE damage with Vial Jammer. I have the Vial Mask, and Jammer is the main skill. I might eventually throw on a Healing Hive. This build's pretty much unkillable in legendaries. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but this is the first build. So I'm going to walk through 3 builds that you can do a legendary. You can walk into any legendary and do them. All right, so let's get to the action. Rich85, one of the commenters, has doing a lot better than me. He might make his own channel. If he does, I'd really tell you to go watch that, subscribe, and follow and all that stuff. But here I'm setting up this build to go in. He mentioned in the comments that he gets pretty far with his Heartbreaker build. I got Heartbreaker on here and died, and it was just pitiful. I just sat in cover the whole time. Now I'm with this build. I've used this build a lot in legendaries. I use it for the final boss almost in Manning and Tidal Basin. Sped the video up 2 times. So the first thing you're going to see is I put out Vial Jam Pulse. And I'm going to take care of business there. On the other video, people were wondering why I was shooting things and getting... They weren't wondering why, but they were asking me why would I shoot things and get if they were immune. Because I can't reach them. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is about this build. No one's unreachable. They can be behind walls. They can be different parts of the building. If you do any of those manhunts, this build will just rock. The basis of the build. Maybe not this survival build in particular, but I'll show you a couple other builds that will do that. The concept of this character is that if you think about expertise, and once you get things up to level 20, you are going to be investing a ton of exotics to get things up to level 20. So you probably want to have 1 armor set to get up to level 20 because it's very expensive. So I would recommend that would be a skill build, because here's why. When you're raising the armor, when you're raising an armor piece and expertise, it just increases the armor. For a tank build, I just think it's negligible. 20% more armor is 400,000 on a 2 million armor set. And if you ever look at your DPS, a guy that can really throw out DPS on an AR, he's putting 400,000 a shot. So at that point, that little bit of mitigation isn't going to help. For a squishy person like a red or yellow, it helps out a lot. That's number 1. Number 2 is when I'm optimizing gear and re-rolling it and doing all that, a yellow automatically is at the top of the tier because you don't have to worry about is the +1 skill all the way +1 skill. You get yellows, it's the easiest, it's the cheapest. If I'm a beginner going in there, I get yellows immediately. I can get to tier 6. I've run hardcore. I have a couple characters. The main thing to get through is if you have yellows. I'm in the dark zone. The main thing you're going to get through is yellows. There are cases where you're going to get melted by, if I played structured PvP and I get caught out in the open, AR guy all duded up, he's gonna kill me. That's right. But I'm gonna be pulsing the crap out of them with a long range, and I'm gonna be putting effects on them, and I'm gonna do other skills. So, but we're not talking about that. We're not talking about every part of the game. If you're doing heroics, it doesn't matter. You can play any build. I have a video where I do a heroic control point with purples and yellows, and I was shocked at how little the difference was. Now you're going to see what makes this build special. This build has 80% reduction to yellows. There's 2 Chungas in here. They're not going to kill me. You can see my hive ran out of healing. They're not going to kill me. You mate this with a Scorpio, you're not going to die. You're going to put any NPC yellow. I'm going to die to purples and reds pretty fast. It's embarrassing. But to yellows, I'm a god. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to start, when you got extra materials, you're going to make improvised for the gloves, the knees, and the holster. All right, so we're done with this part. Pretty easy. I'm going to change builds now. This build doesn't do a lot of DPS. It's going to survive the Chungas. The next build I'm going to do is my heavy DPS build. And I'm just thinking now that I screwed up the video because I didn't put the right thing in there, but I'll put that in later. All right, so I'm going to put in my high DPS skill build. Now in this build, and I froze it for a second so you can look at it, this has the momentum on the chest piece. It has, I forget what it's called. Let me look it up here real quick. On the backpack, I have a thing where with status effects, you do more damage. That is called, come on, thing. All right. It's, sorry, not prepared. That is called Perfect Shock and All. And that gives you skill percentage 20% for 27 seconds if you put a status effect on someone. I also have in this build, I have the holster that is waveform. And that oscillates in between doing more damage. So this does a lot of damage. I'm pairing it with an Artificer Hive. The Artificer Hive is going to really give the turret a lot of DPS. Okay, so let's look at this. This has a couple of waves. You have the first wave of just normal little folks in there. And I'm going to put the, I made a mistake. This turret, if you're soloing, should be on the middle of that table. That turret can't reach all the places. And you might have to wait till they put down their healing pots. But I had to kill their healing pots. That's why this took a little bit longer. Later, I go out and move it a little bit here to the left, and I can kill all their healing pots. Why is this important during solo legendary DUA? Because the Chungas are coming, the Chungas are coming, the Chungas are coming. So, eventually, if we get some DPS stuff, what happens when I get everything cranking? I have test subject. You're not going to use capacitor because you need to get status effects. So you can use your Scorpio and test subject. And so you can get an extra 40% damage once you get both those going. And you see there's 300,000. In some groups I've gotten over 400,000 from my turret. Not super sustained, but bursts of it. So right now we have 2 builds. I have a yellow survival build. Why survival? Because it gives you an extra 10% damage reductions to elites. You can play around with that, but in general, I have found just the 80%. Then I have 6 pieces with 12% on each one. Mod damage reductions to elite. That's the first build you saw. The second build is my max skill DPS build. You see I'm moving the turret now. Now I can reach their healing hives because the Chungas are coming. And I just want to melt the Chungas faster. Now you're going to say to me, why don't you, every time you go through here, you do this? I kind of do. I'm in some groups and I'm constantly changing my builds for each section. They're not. They're just running through. And that's okay. And sometimes I'm trying a new build and I just want to run through. But I can tell you what, if I can solo this and I can solo those 3 Chungas, if I'm in a group of 4, it goes down even faster. And I talked about that, about more of the synergy you have with builds with people in your thing. One of the commenters, the reason why I'm making this video is one of the commenters said this isn't a proper, what are you doing? This is clickbait. And I wrote a long explanation why, and then I got back and I said, honestly, if I was doing clickbait, I'm pretty shitty at it because my channel, although I appreciate everyone's on it, it's still slowly growing. I don't have 60,000 views. I'm not trying to clickbait you. If you want to know how to play Division, I would tell you there's pretty much one way, unless you're a diehard, I got to be a red, is to be a skill build. If you have a group where it's all skill builds, you have people throwing out seekers, you have people with the artillery turret, you have someone like me, you walk through these kind of things. Conversely, if you have 3 high-level DPS people have maximized everything out and they have that shield, and I put out healing and I'm pulsing things, we walk through it then too. I'm not saying there's not different ways. The point of that video was to show you I'm trying to do these reds, and sometimes it's hard, and I will admit that might be my gameplay style. But if I want to finish a legendary, I know what builds. I have 3 builds. That's the 3 builds I'm showing you. So this is the max DPS build, and you see we go right through there like it's nothing. This next section has a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So the video is going to be wrong. I'm going to slow it down and stop and show you what build I have, and I'm going to put that in there. The copy I have right now is the wrong. That's the build I just had out there. The build you're going to have is going to have Vile Mask, and it's going to have Creeping Death Backpack. And those 2 will pretty much let you walk through anything, except Legendary Solo. But I'm going to do some Legendary Solo. There's certain scenarios, wide open areas where you can't hit all the enemies that are tough for this build. And it's a little bit slower because you're relying on indirect damage. You can amp up the damage, but you reduce your survivability. So if you're soloing, I have a build that's slightly less damaging than my normal Vile Jammer build. And this build has a little more skill damage on it. It has 1 blue piece, the Pizarro holster, and that's what you're going to see here. And I can't figure out what I'm doing. Oh, no, that looks like I still have the skill build. Nope, I'm going to switch it. So at the end, I switch it, right? I don't know. I'm thinking about what I'm going to face. In this section, you're going to face drones. The other thing I'm trying to show you when I'm flipping through all those builds, the different strength of my turret. On my main Vile Jammer build, turret 72,000. On my intermediate one, it's 98. And on my DPS one, it's 127. That's how I gauge my skill damage. You'll also notice another thing. I'm not out in front. On a heroic, you can go right next to the people. Not so much on a legendary. So the person asks, what is this channel for? It's to discuss these type of strategies. I put out a video. People are kind enough to watch it. I have some people, I'm super thankful, they'll notice small, very small details. One of my builds was broken, and a person noticed it. Hey, why you got this? Another person said, hey, why don't you add this piece? So this is for the Division 2 community to discuss tactics, do builds. And I try to do a little bit of science. If you looked at some of my other videos, I do a lot of comparison videos where I take 3 builds in the roughly the same scenario, and you can find out how does a build compare. What I keep coming back to, and this might be my bias, is that the skill build overall can get you through anything. And I'll tell you a horrible, long time ago, I played the Division 2 a lot. Long time ago, I was in a guild and or a clan, and we were doing the first big group, whatever they're called, raid. And my skill, but I just didn't have enough DPS. The division was set up, I just didn't have enough DPS. I was a skill build. I didn't know about EMP. I didn't know crap. And they had to carry me. I felt bad. I tried to go AR, but then I couldn't switch my builds. I didn't have multiple builds. And partly what I'm trying to tell everyone and what I'm trying to show people is you should have multiple builds with you at all times. All right, so we're done through this part. It's relatively easy. Normally you get bombed. And again, the other thing I wanted to point out was that I'm cheating. Here's this other build. This is going to be back to, I think that's my full DPS build. My full EMP build. Not a lot of health, not positive. But the other thing I'm trying to show you, running a legendary and solo is completely different than running a legendary with 4 people. With 4 people, the mobs are just harder. They hit harder. They have more health. It's a different game. So it's unfair for me to tell you that I have a build, I have a red build, and I've soloed, and look, and I can do legendaries, because those people come into the legendaries I run, and they just get wiped out immediately until they start taking cover. Because it's just, your shield can maybe take 1 person, but you got like 7 people. And you have to think about the aggro. They're all aggroing you. And there's more of them. Right, so let's say it's, instead of 4 people in a section, let's say it's 12 people in a section, you have 8 of those firing on you. No one has enough healing to keep up with that. So I looked at some of those videos. I changed the title line on this one because, the titles are flashy. I could make the titles flashier. I'm trying to go for like a brand and people know what they get when they hear. And I feel bad that people came here and got misled. I'm not trying to mislead you. If you want to know how to build, if you want to know a build to play, there's 3 builds to have. And they all have kind of the same pieces. They're improvised builds. You have 3 pieces improvised, so you can get different modifications. It's how much more head damage? It's 10% more head damage max out, so it's 30%. It's, all these kind of things. It's more skill haste. It's more damage reduction to elites. That's right. So that's one of the advantages of an improvised build. Your chest piece and your backpack are the most important pieces because those are what are going to give you the nuances of your build. Creeping Death is fantastic if you do status builds. I went on the test server and grinded till I got a piece of perfect Creeping Death. And yes, it's better, but it's on a new brand set that's coming that's horrible. And so a lot of the builds I have now have Unbreakable, because if I have less healing, Unbreakable is like a canary in the coal mine, which it'll die before you do. So Unbreakable will fire off. You need to get cover. So, but Ronin, how do I know? Because you can go in hardcore mode with skill builds and you will dominate. You'll run through the content unless the division kicks you off. If you go on the DZ at first, the first tiers, I'm not doing hardcore PvP, but in the DZ, you're killing all those mobs and you can take other things on because you have a turret, tier 6 turret, and drone that are doing a lot of stuff. If you're in a legendary and you have, you'll notice I don't play with a revive hive, because a revive hive in a group of 4, maybe if one person has it, but you shouldn't be wiping. If you're wiping, you're not playing the game the right way, right? I'd say I'm maximizing. That's one thing you can see in all these builds. I'm not wasting a slot on something that's saying, well, I could die. Now, here's the funny thing. I eventually die after this. I complete the next stage and I get into the bar fight. And when I'm setting up my turret as I'm running back, they shoot and kill me. So that's a funny haha. But if I want to spend 2 or 3 hours in solo DUA, I could. But that doesn't seem very fun. And so what's the point then? The point is these are solid builds that when you take them into heroic, you're going to have no problem getting the content. If you're doing a manhunt, you're going to get through the content. I have a tank build that's fantastic. It's not for legendaries, it's for heroics, and I can just complete any content on heroic. Legendaries are a different test. They're a test of your strategy, your skills, and your build. Again, you can do a heroic control point with purples as long as they're yellows. So you can have a turret. So you can have a turret and a drone doing your stuff for you. But that's kind of the thing. So it'd be disingenuous if I sat up here and did a bunch of other builds. I struggle with a red build because I don't see any differentiation in them. There's some nice features. There's stacking features. Heartbreaker is a blue build that you can kind of make into a red build. I rolled some of the pieces as red to get more damage. I could do Striker. Negotiator's Dilemma is super powerful. They're all really fun builds, and they're fun to play. But I don't necessarily, if I'm soloing, the margin of error and I have to take a lot of my skills to make sure I survive instead of doing damage. And maybe I'm going to do the damage in my gun, but I'm playing a cover-based shooter, so if I stay in cover and I pulse everyone to death, I think I'm achieving the goal. So that's the point of the channel. I appreciate everyone that always watches the channel. Thank you very much for all your support and all your comments. I appreciate them, and I try to enact them. I appreciate the news people that showed up. I'm sorry you felt it was clickbait. Didn't want to clickbait you. This is the point of the channel, to show you how to, one possible way you can get through the division very easily. So thank you everyone again, and enjoy.